welcome back to Pokemon Episode Summaries. Today, I'll be doing episode 89, The Crystal Onyx. The episode begins with Ash and the gang on the water with Lapras as usual when they spot a bottle in the distance. Lapras goes to pick up this bottle in its mouth and gives it back to Ash and the gang, and they then read what was inside the bottle, being a note that was apparently from a girl named Marissa on Sunburst Island, who was asking if anyone had seen a crystal onyx. Ash questions what a crystal onyx was, with Tracy revealing that he had heard of one before, stating that it was essentially just a crystal onyx, pretty self-explanatory, an onyx covered in crystals. Curious about this crystal onyx, and whoever this Marissa girl was, Ash and the gang decide to go to Sunburst Island, and they eventually arrive. As they walk through the streets, they immediately discover that the island was primarily a tourist attraction, it seemed like, as there were a whole bunch of shops lining the streets. Pikachu went up to one that was carrying a whole bunch of glass bottles and put its face up to one and was amazed by its reflection. At the store beside this one, though, Ash and the gang spotted a grown-ass man yelling at a little girl, telling her to shut down her store, revealing his name was Ruben, and claiming that she was killing his business by running such a dead store, indicating that her store was dying. Man, what the hell? The girl is obviously upset by this rival shop owner's proposal, and being like, why the fuck are you yelling at a kid, man? That's not cool. Obviously not being cool with this, Ash and the gang intervene on the argument that was going on, and immediately question why this dude was harassing this girl. The dude simply responds in fear if they knew her, and they say that they don't, but he still decides to walk away, claiming that it was none of their business what they were arguing about, although he was likely just scared of being fucking reprimanded by the cops for yelling at a kid, so he probably just ran away in fear. The girl thanks Ash and the gang for essentially scaring that bitch away, and reveals that her name was Marissa. Upon hearing the name Marissa, Ash instantly pulls out the note, and asks if she was the one who wrote about the crystal onyx. She jumps up in excitement, and asks them if they've ever seen one, or knew a lot about it, and they obviously deny, as Tracy had only heard the brief story, he knew nothing about it. This leaves the girl disappointed, hoping that someone would know, as she sadly retreats back into her store. However, Ash stops her, and questions if she really ran this store all by herself, being a little girl, to which she reveals that her brother was actually in the store as well, and did most of the work. Ash and the gang decide to go to talk to her brother to see why this girl was so interested in the crystal onyx, and why she was getting yelled at by this random-ass dude for getting in the way of his business. The brother introduces himself as Mateo, and essentially confirms that, yes, his store was struggling, so that's why the man wanted him to shut it down, but confirmed that the store used to actually be a very, 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 very popular location when it was ran by his grandfather, because his grandfather was able to make really real-life-like statues, and that really impressed everybody, so they bought the shit out of all the realistic statues. However, when his grandpa died, forcing him to take over, he discovered that he was not nearly as talented as his grandfather, and claimed that he felt that nothing that he made had lived up to his grandfather's legacy, so he didn't feel right to sell it, as the customers had gotten better products in the past. He then shows Ash and the gang several of his sculptures, though, and Misty especially remarks how good they were, revealing that this whole situation could have been avoided if Mateo just didn't get into his own head, because his work was actually probably just as good as his grandfather's, but he just had such severe doubt in himself that he was killing his own business in the process. Ash and the gang tried to tell Mateo about this, stating how beautiful his work was, but Mateo explained that the problem wasn't that they weren't beautiful, it was the fact that they had no soul to them. And being an artist, he believed all forms of art needed to have soul to them of some kind. He used his grandpa spotting the crystal onyx in a cave as an example. He had actually managed to spot the real thing, and because of that, he was inspired to create such a good representation of him in crystal form, as he proceeds to show Ash and the gang his grandpa's crystal onyx sculpture. He then smashes several of the sculptures that he himself has worked on, claiming that he would only sell any of his sculptures if he got inspiration beforehand, and reveals that this is why it was his dream to find the crystal onyx, essentially because it was the main thing that gave his grandpa motivation to make all of his sculptures, so he figured that if he saw the crystal onyx, it would give him motivation as well. Marissa then pleads with Ash and the gang to help them look for the crystal onyx so that their store doesn't have to go fucking bye-bye entirely, and Ash and the gang agree. Meanwhile, Team Rocket was on Sunburst Island as well, and they were in none other than that rude dude's store from earlier, admiring all of his glass sculptures. Of course, evil pricks were supporting another evil prick, but anyways, Meowth yells at them for becoming distracted by doing way too much admiring, and when Meowth yells at them, it causes them to get scared and drop all the glass on the floor. This alerts the owner, and he essentially says, yo, break it, you buy it, but Team Rocket are broke as fuck, so they panic as they can't pay for it, probably thinking the man would kill them or some shit, but no, surprisingly not. He actually just puts them to work, chopping wood and carrying wood, basically just forcing them to do labor to work off the cost. As they're working monotonously in the shop's backyard, they overhear the store owner talking with another store owner from the front of the shop, and they're basically talking about how Ash and the gang were going to go look for the crystal onyx with Mateo, implying that they've heard about it. Did they fucking spy on them or something? And these two guys, the bastards that they are, proceed to make fun of Ash and the gang and Mateo for being desperate fucks to go look for a crystal onyx, which obviously didn't exist. Upon hearing about a crystal onyx, this obviously excites Team Rocket, as it was obviously a rare Pokemon, so they proceed to break out of the backyard of the shop and go looking for it. Meanwhile, Ash and the gang, along with Marissa and Mateo, were now indeed looking for the crystal onyx. They had stopped in the middle of a path so that Tracy could let out his Venonat, as he planned to use the Venonat to help search for the onyx. The Venonat essentially did this by using its radar eyes to scan the crystal onyx statue that Mateo's grandfather had made, and it essentially puts an image inside of Venonat's head of an onyx, so it begins to look for something that also resembles that image. And it eventually leads Ash and the gang to a rock structure that was shaped like an onyx, showing the potential flaw in the Venonat plan, as it didn't mean that it was going to bring them to a real-life onyx, just something that looked like an onyx. Realizing this, a disappointed Tracy then gets a different idea and sends out his other Pokemon, Meryl. That's right, he had more than Venonat after all. Ash scans the Meryl with his Pokedex, having never seen it before. Obviously, because Meryl was actually a fucking Generation 2 Pokemon, even though we're not at Generation 2 yet. Nice. Anyways, Tracy's plan with Meryl was to utilize its awesome sense of hearing to track the sound of an onyx. He did this by playing a tape recording of an onyx's cry to the Meryl, as the Meryl proceeded to run off in search of an identical one. It informs Tracy that it actually managed to hear something, and Tracy excitedly leads the group as they all end up at a beach. The group questions why Meryl brought them to a beach when they were looking for a goddamn onyx. Obviously, the onyx wasn't going to be in the water, but then Meryl points to an island that was across the ocean. Not like another full-blown island or anything, just like a little mini island. You know what I mean, you can see the picture. Or perhaps this mini island was actually just part of Sunburst Island in general, as suddenly a sandbar then reveals itself, connecting the two islands. So yeah, if the sandbar was just hidden beneath the water this whole time, it's safe to say that this was just an extension of Sunburst Island. Because otherwise, this is a really good Deus Ex Machina moment, where a sandbar just suddenly appears. But anyways, Ash and the gang use the sandbar to cross to the smaller island. But as soon as they get there, they fall into a hole. Man, I wonder who dug this. Surprise, surprise, it was Team Rocket. They had arrived on the mini island first. I don't know how they were able to track an onyx there. They didn't have a Venonat or a Meryl, but they were there. Team Rocket then do their motto as usual, with Misty trying to counter with a pun about trees, being make like a tree and leaf, ha. And James responds to this by saying, who told you that pun? Professor Oak, get it? Trees, ha. Team Rocket are done with puns though, so they just run off and proceed to go look for the crystal onyx. As for why Misty felt the need to fire back with puns in the first place, I'm just going to say it was because she was trying to annoy Team Rocket to show them how much that they annoyed them with their motto. But anyways, with Team Rocket gone and Ash and the gang still trapped, Marissa started to cry like, oh, we're never going to find the crystal onyx now. But Ash was like, no, don't worry, we will, because I'm the protagonist, so we can instantly get out of this hole. And they proceed to climb out of the hole, having no issues whatsoever, even though they usually need something like rope to get out, but well, whatever, fuck. According to the dub, they dug their way out, so just take that as you will. The important thing was Ash and the gang had escaped from the hole and proceeded to run farther onto the island, but they soon encountered Team Rocket yet again, who had foolishly fallen into their own traps that they had set for Ash and the gang, knowing that they would probably get out of the hole. Meowth got his foot stuck in a tree, James was stuck on top of a hole that he was digging, and Jessie had got caught in a wood cage. Team Rocket begged for Ash and the gang to help them, but Ash and the gang see a cave in the distance and figure that's probably where the onyx was, so they're like, nope, see ya, you fucks, we do not care about you. That's good, because usually it seems like Ash and the gang would cave in, no pun intended, and save Team Rocket, but they didn't here. Nice. Much to Team Rocket's dismay, obviously. But anyways, Ash and the gang enter the cave, and when they reach the end, they find an area with a whole bunch of crystals and a lake. Meryl proceeds to dive into the lake in an attempt to find the crystal onyx, and while it was doing so, Tracy coincidentally spots the crystal onyx's head poking out of the lake. He tries to alert Ash and the gang of this, but the onyx then immediately retreats as soon as it's been noticed. Shortly after, though, Meryl comes jumping out of the lake, screaming, followed by the onyx, with Meryl being scared out of the lake due to the large waves that the onyx was producing. But anyways, the onyx had now revealed itself, and it was in fact made of crystals. Hey, I guess Meryl did something after all, as it likely spotted the Meryl, and that's what enticed it to come up. Tracy immediately begins sketching the crystal onyx, because why wouldn't he? And Mateo sends out his cloister so he can attempt to weaken the onyx so he can capture it, as he probably wanted infinite inspiration, and if he had the crystal onyx at all times, boom, that's what he would get. Despite Cloyster having the type advantage, we should know that type advantages don't work in the Pokemon anime, as Cloyster was immediately knocked out by the onyx, who used just a single headbutt. Damn, those crystals must have been powerful. To make matters even worse, though, not only was Cloyster knocked out, but Team Rocket had freed themselves from their trap somehow. Ash and the gang questioned this, and it's actually funny, as we don't get a genuine explanation. James literally admits, even the writers don't know. So we actually get a fourth wall break here, and I really appreciate this from the writers. It showed that the writers really just didn't fucking care at this point, and I respect them. We're dealing with Pokemon here, and this is prior to Pokemon Horizons, when the story began to take itself a bit more seriously. And that's part of the charm of these earlier episodes. It's just like a random adventure that makes hardly any sense. Anyways, Team Rocket thankfully doesn't do their motto again, as they're too busy fantasizing as soon as they show up about what they were going to use all of the crystal from the onyx for, imagining a whole bunch of crystal jewelry and crystal pools. Meowth also imagines turning his gold coin into a crystal coin, and thinks about how much more valuable that would be. Also, I just realized, was this made as foreshadowing to the Gen 2 games, like Pokemon Crystal? Because you already had the Meryl hint, and you have the GS ball, which was gold and silver ball. Like, holy shit. Anyways, Jesse and James waste no time in sending out their Arbok and Victory Bell. Man, I'm so glad Victory Bell is being used more. And Victory Bell obviously proceeds to bite James's head, because we have to continue with that gag. But it then focuses with Arbok on the battle, as Ash and Misty send out their Staryu and Pikachu. Staryu starts off with some smaller attacks, and then Pikachu uses its Thunderbolt. And all of these attacks make Team Rocket realize that they were not going to win, as their Pokemon were now too weakened at this point, so they begin to run out of the cave, but are stopped by the Crystal Onix, who proceeds to whap them with his tail, sending them blasting off, despite Jesse's pleas for the Onix to let them go. With Team Rocket gone, Mateo gets back to trying to catch the Onix, and decides to send out his Charmeleon this time, despite Cloyster not even working, having the type advantage. I don't know why he chose to send out Charmeleon, but he does, and it immediately dodges Onix's Rock Throw, and proceeds to use a Flamethrow and Ember. This manages to overwhelm the Crystal Onix, and fucking burn its crystals, turning them red. This actually looks really fucking beautiful, I have to say. Mateo then follows up with a Fire Spin, which traps the red Crystal Onix in the fire, and as Mateo sees this, it begins to give him inspiration, and he then stares at the Onix, and looks into his crystal body so intensely that he's able to see reflections of himself. Man, he really looked at that Onix. It better give him inspiration because of this. He looks at the Onix so intensely that he zones out, and he doesn't realize the Onix eventually fall to the ground due to being damaged so much. Ash manages to snap him out of his trance and remind him to catch the Onix, but then Mateo replies that he had decided not to, since he had already gotten enough inspiration from just looking at him once, clarifying that it was just something about Onix's crystals that enabled him to see anything in the reflection that gave him the inspiration that he needed to be able to create anything, or some bullshit like that. Onix then retreats into the water as Ash and the gang retreat with Mateo and Marissa to their shop. Mateo immediately begins work with his Charmeleon, who was revealed to be his glass-making partner, which was why he wanted to have it battle against the Onix, despite the type disadvantage. He wanted his partner to get in on it too, but anyways, he makes a glass figurine with his partner due to now being inspired, and this greatly pleases Marissa, not just because she got to see her brother happy again, but because it meant that they didn't have to close down their store and go broke. Yay! Ash and the gang then take their leave, but not before Ash receives the glass figurine that Mateo was making, which was revealed to be a figurine of his Pikachu. I don't know how he got the inspiration to make a Pikachu from the Onix, but whatever, man. The episode ends with Ash and the gang saying goodbye to Mateo and Marissa, and Ash admiring the figurine of Pikachu as they return to the water, and he lets out Lapras to continue their journey.